Scarlet and Violet blew all of our minds when they allowed us to go to another region in DLC. That, of course, being the land of Kitakami. But the land of Kitakami is not all of this new region. There's much, much more, and we didn't get to go to it. But we might sooner than you think. Welcome back to the Lumios Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we are talking about the possibility that Gen 10 could be Kitakami. That could be the region of Gen 10. And I know that's a wild one, but stay with me on this. This is honestly something I really think could happen. So first off, let's just get out the facts, the history. GameFreak loves to hint at future regions. I mean, people find evidence when a new game comes out that GameFreak hinted at it in a previous game. Like, for example, I remember in Sword and Shield, they found wallpaper with oranges and grapes on it. Clearly a hint to Scarlet and Violet with the Naranja and Uva Academy. There was a G-Max Toxtricity poster over in the Alola region. You had the Strange Souvenir was like the most obvious in-your-face one. And people have even pointed out some other things. Like, it looks like the character in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, he's wearing a shoe that is very similar to the real-world Crocs. And they look very similar in color to Fuecoco, which is a Croc Pokemon, so it makes sense that a Croc-style shoes would be themed after it. So, you know, it all builds really, really well. It looks like they were hinting at Fuecoco 2 generations early. So it's not hard for me to believe that Gen 10, which will be a big, big milestone, by the way. This is the 10th generation of Pokemon. And I know generations are a fan term, but it is important to note that Game Freak kind of does still abide by it, and Game Freak still will focus on it, because it will be the 10th brand new starter lineup, the 10th brand new box legendaries. It will be special in that regard. So, naturally, it's going to have a lot of drum up. And so how cool would it be to... Right now, Kitakami's just a place we go to for the Teal Mask, but in Gen 10, it totally reconceptualizes that by letting us know, you've actually been here before. In Gen 9, we let you go to the Gen 10 region. You went there. You just didn't see all of it. I mean, Kitakami has a lot of evidence for there being a lot more of it. You know, for one, Kitakami is based off of some small parts in the Tohoku region of Japan, and the Tohoku region of Japan is, well, largely untouched. Kitakami's the first time they have really broken ground on taking from this area. We did a whole video over on Hidden Power, which is my podcast with Dusty, Go-Goat, and Soul Silver Art. We were joined by our guest, Poke Sutami, who is an expert in all things Japanese. She talked about how, you know, this could work, how this is like the last big place, big region of Japan that hasn't been touched by any game. There are some regions that haven't been touched by a mainline Pokemon game, but were touched by the Pokemon Ranger series, and they always could wreck on that and just, you know, do a new story. But I think this is more likely, and Kitakami being here makes it even more likely, in my opinion. But again, Kitakami is only based off of a small part, just like the northern part, and it's just pulling from some areas of the Tohoku region. There's still plenty that is untouched with Tohoku. So there's that, but then there's also the fact that in Kitakami we see that there is a road leading out of Mossweed Town, and it keeps going, and you can't follow it, but that implies, a road implies more civilization. It implies more to this area. You know, they also make a point to never call Kitakami the Kitakami region. It is called the Land of Kitakami. So, to me, that makes it sound like it is not a new region. It is a part of one. We do know that it is at least a part of one, because when we arrive at the bus stop, the kids talk about how it is a new region that they are in. But I don't think Kitakami is all of it. Very similar to, I recently used this example on another one of the videos I did on this channel, but very similar to how, like, Casaroya Lake is a part of Paldea. It is an area of Paldea, and there's other areas too, like South Province, Area 1, you know. Those are all parts of Paldea, but that is not all of Paldea. It's just a piece of it. That's what Kitakami is one of the provinces, or to use the Japanese terminology, the terminology we use for the actual Japan country, is a prefecture of a larger region. And I mean, this is all but confirmed whether or not we go to Gen 10 Kitakami. You know, whether or not we get to see all of this region, this is pretty much a fact. There's also the fact that it's been speculated for a while now that Gen 10 would feature a return to Japan. You know, that was the bread and butter of Pokemon at first. Kanto was based off the Kanto region of Japan. Then Johto was based off the Kansai region of Japan. I forget what region Hoenn is based off of, but it's also in Japan, and then Sinnoh is Hokkaido. So to return to the country of Japan, you know, in what would be the first time in like 20 years, and have us go to a region that is in Japan, but not one that we've been to previously, like Sinnoh, Kanto, Johto, or Hoenn, would be insane. And it's been something, again, that people have been speculating for a really long time. I mean, we've been in North America and Europe for a good bit now. So I say, yeah, let's go back to Asia, and it's Gen 10, it's a celebratory gen, so let's go to Japan. Kitakami already, in a lot of ways, is kind of a new region, like it fits the criteria for it, right? Like, for one, we do know there are new wild Pokemon here. You can find just wild Poltergeist, just a common Pokemon being found out in the wild of Kitakami. There's also forms of older Pokemon, the Blood Moon or Saluna, evolutions even. Applin has a branch evolution in Diplin here, and we even have some legendaries. These would be sub-legendaries, but Ogerpon and the Loyal 3. And speaking of the Loyal 3, they actually could maybe be hints at what the starters of this region looks like. So for a bit of backstory on the Loyal 3, I'm going to make it brief because I've done a ton of videos talking about this. The Loyal 3 and Ogerpon are not from Kitakami. They all traveled to Kitakami, so they are not from Kitakami. But I propose that they could perhaps still be a part of this big region that Kitakami is a part of, and just not be a part of Kitakami, right? Like, in the same way that I can find low kicks in a lot of places in Paldea, but I can't find it everywhere in Paldea. So, if that's the case, these Pokemon would still be from this region, and just not from the Kitakami part of this region. And I think there's a chance that Fezandipiti, Munkidori, and Okidogi could be the starters. I remember when they were first released, a lot of people speculated that they could be grass, fire, and water type. You know, they are green, blue, and red. They obviously weren't. They're all poison type, and then Fezandipiti has the fairy typing, Okidogi has the fighting typing, and Munkidori has the psychic typing. But perhaps this is because the toxic chain changed them. You know, we know that they looked different before the toxic chain. Maybe what they originally were the starters of this Tohoku region, and Munkidori's original Pokemon, whatever it was originally, I think the toxic chain did, like, make them go through a process similar to how Carbink becomes Diancie, where it's kind of like evolution, but not a form of evolution you can access in-game. So Munkidori is a different Pokemon from what it used to be. And this Pokemon is a water monkey starter. We have Okidogi would be a grass dog starter, and Fezandipiti would be a fire bird, specifically a pheasant starter. And you may go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Torchic can't be a firebird. And I would counter with, whoa, whoa, whoa. Piplup and Quaxley. That's two water birds. Why can't there be? Also, Torchic does take a more humanoid approach in its evolution, and I imagine that whatever this fire starter would be would stay more animalistic and would be a bit more focused on being a bird, right? No hate to Blaziken, it's a great design, but it's not very bird-like, right? There are also still many, many mysteries in Kitakami. I actually previously did a video on this talking about all the things from Kitakami, and there's a lot that we just don't really have solved, and so this could be something that they could intentionally be leaving a mystery to answer in Generation 10. So we've gotten all the dirty work, the schematics out of the way. So what could this region look like? Again, it's important to keep making note that while we're saying Kitakami, it probably wouldn't be called the Kitakami region. It would be called something else. Kitakami will be a part of that region. And also, again, it would be a lot more than just Kitakami. As I said, I could very well see the Loyal 3's original forms pre-Toxic Chains being perhaps the baby forms of the starters. And then I think it would be cool if maybe their typings do hint at their final evolution. So this Water Monkey starter would eventually become Water Psychic, which is Munkidori's secondary typing. And then the grass dog Pokemon would become grass fighting, and the bird would become fire fairy. I also think this is kind of a really neat hidden lesson in there, because that means that these Pokemon took on the toxic chain to get these attributes they wanted, when if they had just been patient, they would have achieved it all along after they evolved. I don't know, I kind of like little hidden stories there. It's like a nice little moral there. I think that's pretty cool. Now, obviously, the region would have a lot of Sinnoh and Johto Pokemon found here because, you know, well, it would be situated between Sinnoh and Johto, very much likely, because the Tohoku region is between Kansai, Kanto, and it's above Kansai and Kanto, which is Johto and Kanto, and it is underneath Hokkaido, which is Sinnoh. So there's probably going to be a lot of Johto, Kanto, and Sinnoh Pokemon. Again, we do see a lot of this with Kitakami, but there'd be a lot outside of that too. I mean, you still find a lot of Pokemon like Poochyena or even Mousehold, I'm pretty sure, is in the Kitakami deck. So there'd be others, and then there'd also be new Pokemon too. It just so happens that in the Kitakami area, there's only wild Poltergeist found there as our new Pokemon. That also means that the whole of the Kitakami decks would be likely in this game. So pretty much every Pokemon in the Kitakami decks is in this new region. Now, probably the biggest point against all of this, I have an explainer for, and that is the question of Terastal. We know that Terastal is a gimmick in Kitakami. You know, there are wild Terra Pokemon. So how do they explain this? There's actually multiple ways they could do this. For one, let's just address the fan reaction to Terastal. In large, I'm sure there are people who hate it. There's always people who like and hate things, right? But in large, Terastal has been very well accepted by fans, both casual fans and competitive fans. And the competitive part is very important. This has been, everybody sings the praises of Terastal in competitive. So they could continue with Terastal, or they even could find a new gimmick that can coexist with Terastal. So the Terastal gimmick would still be a part of Gen 10, but of course there will be a new gimmick. It just so happens you can access both. Very similar to how in Alola in Gen 7, Z-moves were the big gimmick, but we did end up getting Mega Evolution in the post-game, and in competitive you could use both Mega Evolution and Z-moves. I imagine it'd be the same way with Terastal and whatever the Gen 10 gimmick is. Or maybe even the Gen 10 gimmick is some kind of expansion on Terastal. We do see some of this with like a Terastal state that Ogerpon can access. Maybe they dive into this further. I don't know. Just spitballing here. I'm not Game Freak. I'm sure they've got it all worked out. There is also the possibility that they say that the Terastal phenomenon can be here, but they never give you a Terra Orb and just kind of never explain why you find wild Terra Pokemon. I'm not saying I want that explanation, but it is Game Freak. That is a very real possibility. We gotta be honest with ourselves. They could just be like, yeah, Terastal can occur here. Anyway, or not even say Terastal can occur here and just let you visit the crystal pools and not worry about it. They could do that. I don't think they will, and I would certainly hate if they did, but that's always a possibility. Now looking geographically, we know that there is a region between Johto and Sinnoh, and this is the Sinjo region. And we've actually been to part of it. We've been to the Sinjo ruins in Heart Gold and Soul Silver via a special event where if you brought in the Arceus from the event, you could visit the Sinjo region. Well, if you're comparing the map of Japan to the Pokemon world, the only place Sinjo could be is also the Tohoku region. So perhaps, again, Sinjo was a small part of a larger region. So this region would also contain Sinjo, which is really cool, and there's so much potential lore set up there, which I'm all for. And again, I think Gen 10 will also be a very lore-heavy gen, because it's supposed to be a very big deal. And on the subject of it being a big gen, it being this important gen, a big deal, it would probably be very similar in some aspects to Sun and Moon. If you look at Sun and Moon, that was also a big gen. It was Generation 7, but it was coming out on the 20th anniversary of the Pokemon franchise. So the Pokemon franchise was now 1/5 of a century old. That is insane. So they kind of decked Sun and Moon out, right? Like, we saw the return of Red and Blue, and they were all grown up, and then there were plenty of other characters from throughout Pokemon's history appearing there, like Wally and Cynthia and Annabelle and Grimsley, you know, all over the place. They were throwing these characters in our face. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon even had the return of every single villain from the Pokemon franchise. I mean, from Giovanni all the way up to Lysander was, at the time, the most recent one. I imagine that we would see a similar thing with Gen 10, and Kitakami, using the region that it is a part of, would make that very easy, because for one, when you go to the Kitakami area, well, that's where Carmine and Kieran's house is, so you can very easily meet them. The connection that Kitakami has to the Blueberry and Naranja/Uva academies would make it easy to see Paldea or Unova characters appear there. You know, they're studying there on behalf of the Blueberry Academy or on behalf of the Naranja or Uva Academy. So that would be really easy to do. I mean, we know Jacques is there right now, just sitting by a tree waiting to give you a Sinnoh egg. So maybe he does that here. Also, it being in close proximity to the Kanto and Johto and Sinnoh regions would make it have a lot of Kanto or Johto or Sinnoh characters there, easily explained. This would only leave the Hoenn, Kalos, Alola, and Galar regions like left out with not a clear connection. But at the end of the day, they can still have characters from there pop up in this region. It's not like they needed a connection between Alola and Hoenn to have Wally or Annabelle appear, or a connection between Alola and Unova to have Grimsley appear. They don't need that, but again, it would just be easy to explain that. I could totally see Cynthia popping up in the Sinjoh ruins. I could totally see us visiting Mossweed Town and running into Carmine and Kieran. That's just easy to explain. And now, the most fun part of this. What new Pokemon are we going to see in this region? Because again, it's Gen 10. There's going to be a brand new batch of Pokemon, including box legendaries, common Pokemon, probably some more evolutions. Diplin's just one of the ones that happens to be accessible in the Kitakami part of it. Poltergeist is just one new Pokemon that happens to be accessible in the Kitakami part of it. So what else could we see? Well, I think it's interesting that if you look back at before the Teal Mask, there were a lot of rumors of evolutions for Noctowl, Mightyena, and also a ton of rumors for Chimecho. Obviously, Chimecho, Noctowl, and Mightyena, while all in the Kitakami Dex, did not get an evolution. But I remember in Legends Arceus, there was a lot of talk about Dunsparce getting an evolution, and this didn't happen. But then in the next game, in Scarlet and Violet, Dunsparce did get an evolution to Dunsparce. So I think there's a chance that maybe these rumors, occasionally rumors are just rumors and they come from nothing, right? But sometimes rumors actually do come from somewhere. And maybe these rumors, especially the Chimecho one, that's the one I'm like most believing could be the case with. These could have been coming from a legit source, but things got mixed up. It's a classic game of telephone, or things got misconstrued in that they were working on a Chimecho evolution, and it was for Kitakami, but in Gen 10 when we go back to Kitakami, you know? So maybe Noctowl, Mightyena, especially Chimecho, could see something, but I don't know. There would definitely be other Pokemon getting evolutions too, I would think. You know, they did, what, 4 in Galar, Paldea. They did 3 true ones, I believe, and so not related to a form in Hisui. So I would say between like 3 and 5. So I don't know. Maybe that'd be it, but I could see more. As for other Pokemon I'd love to see in this region that are actually native to the Tohoku region of Japan, Kingfishers, that's like one of the coolest birds ever. As a regional bird, would be insane. Tanukis, how have we not had like a true Tanuki Pokemon? There'd be people that argue that Zigzagoon, but 1, I don't think so, and 2, it definitely isn't when it evolves. I want one that stays a Tanuki when it evolves. There's also macaques, martens, seals, sea lions, bats. And of course, being Japan, there are plenty of yokai and legends and lore that they can also pull from, which honestly, those tend to be like some of the most metal, some of the most amazing designs, right? Things like Ursaluna or, a lot of the Hisui Pokemon, Frozlass, stuff like that. I'm all fine with them doing more of those. That sounds amazing. But yeah, be sure to let me know what you think of this in the comments below. I think that the idea of Game Freak, you know, actually right now letting us see the Gen 10 region is really cool. It also does make sense now that I think about it, that with all these rumors of Unova remakes coming and us visiting Blueberry Academy, which is in the Unova region, it could be seen that way too. The DLC was hinting at the future, you know. We have the Indigo Disc hinting at the Unova remakes, and then we have the Teal Mask hinting at Gen 10. I would love that so much. I want to know if you would too, so let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. We're a ways out from Gen 10, but as we start getting more hints, teases, or even official news on it, you know we'll be covering it here, as well as many other things Pokemon. You don't want to miss that. Until next time, I will see all of you later.